The wind swept across the Wyoming plains, carrying the scent of sagebrush and fresh earth. Beneath the vast blue sky stood Red Canyon Ranch, a place where wild Mustangs roamed the hills and only the toughest riders earned their place. It was known less as a riding school and more as a proving ground, a place where people either discovered who they truly were or packed their bags before sunrise. Emma Carter tightened the straps on her worn leather boots and stared at the ranch from the gravel driveway. She had traveled nearly 1,000 miles to get there, leaving behind the city, her office job, and the painful memories that had haunted her for the past year. Once, she had been fearless. Then came the accident. A professional mountain biker with dreams of national championships, Emma had suffered a devastating crash that shattered her leg and nearly ended her life. Although months of surgery and rehabilitation allowed her to walk again, they couldn't repair the confidence she had lost. Every challenge reminded her of failure. Every mirror reflected someone she no longer recognized. When she heard about Red Canyon Ranch and its legendary trainer known only as Apache, she signed up without hesitation. People online described him as demanding, brutally honest, and impossible to impress. That was exactly what she needed. The ranch buzzed with activity as riders saddled horses before dawn. Stable hands carried hay bales while the distant thunder of galloping hooves echoed across the valley. Emma spotted a tall man standing beside a dark bay horse. He wore a faded cowboy hat, weathered boots, and a denim jacket that had clearly seen decades of hard work. His calm posture seemed almost effortless, yet every horse nearby watched him with complete attention. "You must be Emma," he said without turning around. His voice was deep and steady. "I'm Apache." She extended her hand. He simply nodded. "No need for introductions," he replied. "The horses will tell me everything I need to know about you." Emma wasn't sure whether he was joking. He wasn't. Within minutes, Apache handed her a brush. "Start with Dakota." She looked toward the horse. Dakota was enormous. The muscular Mustang stood perfectly still, studying her with intelligent brown eyes. "I thought I'd start riding today." "You'll ride when Dakota trusts you." Emma frowned. "I came here to learn to ride better." Apache folded his arms. "You came here because you're afraid." His words landed harder than she expected. "I am not." "You flinch before every step." She opened her mouth to argue. Then realized he was right. Every movement she made was cautious. Every decision carried hesitation. The accident had never really ended. It had simply followed her. For the next several hours, Emma brushed Dakota's coat in silence. At first, the horse kept his distance, shifting nervously whenever she reached too quickly. Apache watched from across the corral without saying a word. Eventually, Emma slowed her breathing. She stopped trying to control the moment. Instead, she listened. Dakota relaxed. The horse lowered his head. For the first time, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. "Better," Apache finally said. "That's it. That's everything." The next morning began before sunrise. Apache woke every trainee at 4:30. "No shortcuts," he announced. "If you want an easy life, you're on the wrong ranch." The training was relentless. Carrying heavy feed sacks. Repairing fences beneath the hot afternoon sun. Cleaning muddy stalls. Running alongside horses through open fields. By sunset, Emma's muscles screamed with exhaustion. She collapsed onto a wooden bench outside the stable. Another trainee laughed. "I thought this was horseback riding." Apache overheard. "This isn't about horses." "What is it about?" Emma asked. He looked toward the mountains glowing beneath the evening light. "Discipline." The days blended together. Every sunrise brought another challenge. Every challenge uncovered another weakness. Emma's hands blistered. Her shoulders ached. Her old leg injury burned with every uphill climb. Several trainees quietly packed their bags and left before the first week ended. Emma thought about joining them more than once. Especially after Apache made her repeat a simple writing exercise nearly 20 times because she kept anticipating Dakota's movements instead of trusting him. "You keep fighting the horse," Apache said. "I'm trying to stay balanced." "No." He shook his head. "You're trying to stay safe." There was a difference. Emma understood it instantly. Ever since her accident, safety had become her highest priority. She avoided risks. Avoided disappointment. Avoided believing in herself. That evening, Apache led Dakota toward a steep hill overlooking the valley. "Ride." Emma hesitated. The slope looked intimidating. "So? You don't trust yourself?" "I do." "No." Apache adjusted Dakota's reins before handing them back. "You trust fear." Emma mounted slowly. Every heartbeat felt louder than the last. Dakota began climbing. The trail grew steeper. Loose rocks shifted beneath powerful hooves. Emma's injured leg trembled. By the time they reached the summit, every muscle in her body burned. She slid off the saddle the moment Dakota stopped. Her knees nearly buckled. She leaned against the horse, breathing heavily. "It hurts." She gasped between breaths. Apache looked at her with quiet confidence. She straightened herself despite the pain. "But I need more." For the first time since arriving, Apache smiled. It wasn't a large smile. Just enough to reveal genuine pride. He rested a weathered hand on Dakota's neck before looking directly into Emma's eyes. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "you're stronger than a Mustang." For the first time since the accident, Emma believed it might actually be true. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, she realized this ranch wasn't changing the way she rode. It was changing the way she saw herself. Emma barely slept after Apache's words echoed through her mind. "Sweetheart, you're stronger than a Mustang." For months, every doctor, therapist, and friend had told her she was recovering. They praised her determination, celebrated every milestone, and reminded her how lucky she was to be walking again. But Apache was different. He didn't congratulate her for surviving. He expected her to live. Before dawn, a loud bell rang across Red Canyon Ranch. Emma pulled on her boots and hurried outside, where the sky was painted in shades of purple and orange. The air was cool, carrying the familiar scent of fresh hay and cedar. The other trainees gathered around Apache beside the corral. Without greeting anyone, he tossed each rider a saddle blanket. "Today's lesson isn't about riding," he said. "It's about partnership." He pointed toward the herd grazing nearby. "A horse follows confidence, not commands." The trainees exchanged puzzled glances. Apache simply opened the corral gate. "Go earn it." Emma spotted Dakota standing near the fence, lazily swishing his tail. She approached carefully, remembering everything Apache had taught her. No sudden movements. No rushing. No fear. Dakota lifted his head and watched her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, to Emma's surprise, Dakota walked toward her on his own. A small smile spread across her face. She scratched behind his ears, and the Mustang gently nudged her shoulder. "Looks like you've made a friend," one trainee said. Emma smiled. "I think we're both still deciding." Apache, watching from across the field, nodded almost imperceptibly. It was the closest thing to approval she had received. An hour later, the trainees saddled their horses for a trail ride through the foothills. Emma checked Dakota's saddle twice before climbing aboard. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't ridden outside an enclosed arena since the accident. The memories returned instantly. The sharp turn. The loose gravel. The violent crash. Her breathing became shallow. Dakota shifted uneasily beneath her. Apache rode beside her on an old chestnut gelding. "What are you thinking about?" Emma hesitated. "My accident." "Then you're riding yesterday's trail." She looked at him, confused. He continued. "Dakota only knows today." The words settled into her mind. She took a slow breath and loosened her grip on the reins. Immediately, Dakota relaxed. The group began climbing a narrow mountain trail lined with pine trees. Birds chirped overhead while sunlight filtered through the branches. For the first time in a long while, Emma wasn't thinking about winning races or proving herself. She was simply riding. About halfway up the mountain, the trail narrowed beside a rocky ledge. One of the younger trainees, Tyler, grew nervous. His horse sensed the tension and suddenly stepped sideways. Tyler panicked. He yanked hard on the reins. The frightened horse reared. "Easy!" Apache shouted. Instead of calming down, Tyler jumped from the saddle. The horse bolted down the trail. Everyone froze. Without hesitation, Apache turned to Emma. "Go after him." Her eyes widened. "Me? Now?" Fear rushed through her body. She had never chased a loose horse before. What if she failed? What if Dakota stumbled? What if history repeated itself? Apache's voice cut through her doubts. "Trust your partner." Emma swallowed hard. She gently urged Dakota forward. The Mustang accelerated into a smooth gallop. Wind rushed past as they followed the runaway horse through the winding trail. Emma resisted every instinct to grab the reins too tightly. Instead, she let Dakota choose his footing. He moved with remarkable confidence, weaving around rocks and fallen branches as though he had memorized every inch of the mountain. The runaway horse slowed near a small stream. Dakota approached calmly. Emma spoke softly. "It's okay, easy now." The frightened horse lowered its head. Within moments, Emma managed to take hold of the dangling reins. She couldn't believe it. She had done it. When they returned, the other trainees applauded. Even Tyler looked relieved. "Thank you," he said quietly. Emma smiled. "We both did it." She patted Dakota's neck. Apache remained expressionless. For a moment, Emma wondered if she had disappointed him somehow. Finally, he spoke. "What did you learn?" She thought carefully. "I stopped trying to control everything. And I trusted Dakota." Apache nodded. "Good." That single word meant more to Emma than a standing ovation. Later that afternoon, the trainees gathered in the barn to clean equipment. Tyler walked over carrying 2 buckets of water. "I owe you one." Emma laughed. "Just don't lose your horse again." He grinned sheepishly. "No promises." The mood around the ranch felt lighter than before. The trainees were beginning to feel like a team instead of competitors. As evening settled over the valley, Emma led Dakota back to his paddock. The Mustang paused before entering. He turned his head toward her and gently rested his muzzle against her shoulder. Emma closed her eyes. Months ago, she had believed strength meant never falling. Now she was beginning to understand that real strength meant getting back in the saddle after you did. From across the pasture, Apache watched the quiet moment. When Emma looked up, he gave a small nod. No speech. No praise. Just silent acknowledgement that she had taken another step forward. The road ahead would still be difficult. The ranch had tougher challenges waiting. But for the first time since arriving at Red Canyon Ranch, Emma wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She was ready to meet it, one ride, one lesson, and one hard-earned victory at a time. The third week at Red Canyon Ranch arrived with a cold morning breeze that swept across the hills. The mountains in the distance were hidden beneath a blanket of gray clouds, and the horses seemed unusually restless. Emma had grown stronger. Her hands, once covered with painful blisters, had become rough with calluses. The ache in her injured leg was still there, but it no longer controlled every decision she made. Each sunrise brought another challenge, and each challenge made her a little more confident. Even Dakota had changed. The once cautious Mustang now greeted Emma with a gentle nicker whenever she approached the paddock. He trusted her, and she trusted him. Apache noticed. "You've stopped trying to ride the horse," he said one morning as they prepared for training. Emma tightened Dakota's saddle. "What do you mean? Now you're riding with him." She smiled. "I guess that's progress." "It is. But progress has a dangerous habit." Emma raised an eyebrow. "It makes people comfortable." Those words stayed with her all day. After breakfast, Apache gathered the trainees near a large map pinned to the barn wall. Today's route was unlike anything they had attempted before. Instead of following open fields, they would ride through Cedar Ridge, a narrow mountain trail filled with steep climbs, fallen trees, and rocky paths. Several trainees exchanged nervous looks. Apache folded his arms. "The mountain doesn't care how confident you feel. It only respects preparation." Everyone mounted their horses. Emma took a deep breath before guiding Dakota toward the trailhead. The first mile went smoothly. Tall pine trees surrounded them, filling the air with the scent of fresh wood. Birds darted between the branches while sunlight broke through the clouds in narrow beams. Despite the beauty around her, Emma remained focused. Apache rode near the front without saying much. He rarely interrupted unless someone made a mistake. By midday, the trail became more difficult. Loose rocks rolled beneath the horses' hooves. Steep switchbacks forced every rider to stay alert. Emma could feel Dakota carefully choosing each step. "Easy, boy," she whispered. The Mustang flicked an ear toward her voice. They were working together. Then everything changed. A loud crack echoed through the forest. One of the older pine trees, weakened by recent storms, split apart. The sound startled every horse on the trail. Dakota jumped sideways. Another horse behind Emma panicked and bumped into Dakota's hindquarters. For one terrifying second, time seemed to stop. Emma lost her balance. She instinctively grabbed the reins too tightly. Dakota stumbled. Emma slipped from the saddle. She hit the rocky ground hard. Pain exploded through her shoulder. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. She lay still, staring at the sky through the trees. The world became strangely quiet. Then the memories returned. The bicycle crash. The ambulance. The hospital lights. The months of rehabilitation. Fear wrapped itself around her like chains. "I can't." The words escaped before she realized she had spoken them. Apache reached her first. He knelt beside her but made no attempt to lift her immediately. "Can you move?" Emma slowly flexed her fingers. Then her legs. Nothing felt broken. "My shoulder hurts." "It will." He extended a hand. She looked at it. Her breathing quickened. "I can't ride again." Apache didn't argue. He simply sat beside her on the rocky trail. The other trainees waited quietly with their horses. No one spoke. After nearly a minute, Apache picked up a small stone and tossed it down the mountainside. It bounced several times before coming to rest. "What did the mountain do?" he asked. Emma frowned. "What?" "The mountain." Nothing." "Exactly." He looked directly into her eyes. "The mountain didn't knock you down. You fell." Emma lowered her head. "And falling doesn't make you weak." He paused. "Staying down does." Tears filled Emma's eyes. Not because of the pain in her shoulder. Because she realized she had spent the last year staying down emotionally, even while pretending to move forward. Dakota stood only a few feet away. The Mustang hadn't run. Instead, he waited quietly, his ears pointed toward Emma. Almost as if he were waiting for her decision. Apache stood. "I'm going to ask you one question." She looked up. "When you're 80 years old, what story do you want to tell?" Emma swallowed hard. "The one where I quit. Or the one where I climbed back into the saddle?" The answer came before she could overthink it. "The second one." Apache nodded once. "Then prove it." Emma slowly stood. Every muscle protested. Her shoulder throbbed. Her heart pounded. She walked toward Dakota. The Mustang lowered his head. She rested her forehead against his neck. "I'm scared," she whispered. Dakota remained perfectly still. She smiled through her tears. "So are you sometimes." With Apache standing nearby, but refusing to help, Emma placed one boot into the stirrup. She hesitated. The memories tried to pull her backward. The fear whispered that she would fall again. But another voice had grown stronger during the past 3 weeks. The voice that believed. Taking a deep breath, she pushed herself into the saddle. For several seconds, she simply sat there. Nothing happened. Dakota waited patiently. Emma laughed. A genuine, heartfelt laugh. "I did it." Apache climbed back onto his own horse. "I never doubted you." The group continued along the trail. No one mentioned the fall again. It wasn't because it didn't matter. It was because Emma had already written the ending to that chapter. As they reached the summit of Cedar Ridge, the clouds finally parted. Golden sunlight poured across the valley below, lighting the winding rivers and rolling grasslands. Emma looked out over the breathtaking landscape. She realized something important. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing to move forward while fear rode beside you. Apache guided his horse next to Dakota. Without looking at Emma, he quietly said, "Every great rider has scars." He glanced at her injured shoulder. "The best ones don't hide them." Emma smiled. For the first time since her accident, she no longer saw herself as someone who had been broken. She saw herself as someone who had survived. And that made all the difference. The morning after their ride through Cedar Ridge, the ranch was unusually quiet. A thick layer of mist covered the pastures, and the horses remained close together, their silhouettes barely visible through the fog. Emma stepped out of the bunkhouse with a cup of hot coffee, enjoying the rare silence before another demanding day. She noticed Apache standing alone near the fence, gazing toward the northern hills. "You've been up for a while," Emma said as she walked over. "I never sleep much before a difficult day." She followed his gaze. "What happens today?" Apache adjusted the brim of his weathered hat. "We meet Ghost." Emma frowned. "Who's Ghost?" Instead of answering, Apache pointed toward a distant pasture. A flash of silver appeared through the mist. Then it vanished. "That's Ghost." At breakfast, the trainees buzzed with curiosity. Tyler leaned closer to Emma. "I heard Ghost has thrown every rider who's ever tried to break him." Another trainee nodded. "They say he was born wild in the mountains. Nobody knows how old he is." Apache entered the dining hall, and the room instantly fell silent. He placed a photograph on the table. It showed a magnificent silver Mustang standing on a rocky cliff, his mane blowing wildly in the wind. "Ghost isn't dangerous because he's mean," Apache began. "He's dangerous because he trusts no one." He looked around the room. Fear can make even the gentlest soul impossible to reach. Emma couldn't help wondering whether he was talking about the horse, or about people. The group walked to the northern pasture after breakfast. Ghost stood alone on a grassy hill. He was breathtaking. His silver-gray coat shimmered beneath the rising sun, and his dark eyes watched every movement with fierce intelligence. The stallion didn't run. He simply observed. As the trainees approached, Ghost pinned his ears back and pawed the ground. Stay behind the fence, Apache ordered. Everyone obeyed except Emma, who instinctively took one cautious step closer. Ghost snorted loudly. Apache gently placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. Not yet. She stepped back. What happened to him? Apache remained silent for several moments. Finally, he spoke. He was captured by people who believed fear creates obedience. Emma looked back at Ghost. He escaped. But he never forgot. The lesson that day had nothing to do with riding. Instead, Apache instructed everyone to sit quietly outside Ghost's enclosure. No talking. No sudden movements. No trying to impress anyone. The trainees exchanged confused looks. We're just sitting. Apache nodded. If you can't master patience, you'll never earn trust. Hours passed. Some trainees grew restless. A few complained quietly. Others checked the time every few minutes. Ghost ignored them all. Emma simply watched. She noticed how the stallion's ears twitched at every sound. How he constantly positioned himself with an escape route. How he drank only after carefully scanning the surroundings. Everything he did was shaped by caution. By fear. It reminded her of herself after the accident. She had done the same thing. Always looking for danger. Always expecting the worst. Late that afternoon, something unexpected happened. Ghost slowly walked toward the fence. The other trainees immediately stood, hoping for a closer look. The stallion stopped. His ears flattened. He backed away. Sit down, Apache said calmly. Everyone obeyed. A few minutes later, Ghost returned. This time he walked a little closer. Emma remained perfectly still. She didn't reach toward him. She didn't whisper. She simply breathed. Ghost stretched his neck forward. Only inches separated them. Emma could hear his slow breathing. For one brief moment, their eyes met. She saw something she hadn't expected. Not anger. Not aggression. Only fear. Then Ghost turned and trotted away. Tyler sighed. So close. Apache smiled. Closer than you realize. That evening, Emma helped Apache repair a section of broken fence. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, she asked. Will Ghost ever trust people again? Apache hammered another nail into place before answering. Maybe. What if he doesn't? He looked toward the distant pasture where Ghost grazed beneath the fading sunlight. Then we'll keep deserving his trust. Emma considered those words carefully. You really believe patience can heal something that deep? Apache smiled softly. Do you remember your first day here? She laughed. I was terrified. You wouldn't even look Dakota in the eyes. And now? You ride him like you've known each other for years. Emma nodded. I guess trust takes time. It always does. The next morning, Apache surprised everyone. He opened Ghost's gate. The stallion stepped into the larger pasture but didn't run. Instead, he remained nearby, watching. Apache turned to Emma. Walk with me. Together they entered the field. Emma's heart raced. Ghost lifted his head. Every instinct told her to stop. Apache kept walking at an easy pace. Don't chase him, he said. Don't call him. Let him decide. Ghost circled them from a distance. Several minutes passed. Then the stallion did something no one expected. He slowly closed the distance. 10 yards. 5. 3. Emma held her breath. Ghost stopped beside Dakota, who had been quietly grazing nearby. Dakota gently touched noses with the wild stallion. The gesture was calm. Peaceful. Trust offered without force. Ghost looked at Emma. She resisted every urge to reach out. Instead, she simply smiled. The stallion snorted softly before walking away again. Apache watched him disappear over the hill. "That," he said, "is the first step." Emma looked across the open pasture, realizing the lesson had never been about taming a wild horse. Some hearts couldn't be conquered. They could only be invited to trust. And just like Ghost, she was still learning that accepting trust could be as brave as giving it. A month had passed since Emma first arrived at Red Canyon Ranch. The frightened woman who had stepped onto the gravel driveway with a suitcase full of doubt seemed like a distant memory. She was stronger now, not just in her body, but in her mind. Every blister, every sore muscle, every difficult lesson Apache had given her had slowly replaced fear with confidence. Still, Apache had warned them from the beginning. The ranch doesn't test your strength until you think you found it. Emma finally understood what he meant. One crisp autumn morning, Apache rang the ranch bell long before sunrise. The trainees stumbled out of their cabins, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Waiting for them in the barn was a large wooden table covered with maps, water canteens, compasses, ropes, and emergency supplies. Apache stood at the front with his usual calm expression. "Today," he began, "you stop being students." The room fell silent. "You'll ride the endurance trail." Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. Tyler raised his hand. "The one that circles Eagle Peak." Apache nodded. 40 miles. Another trainee swallowed nervously. "That's an all-day ride." "It is. And you'll finish only if you work with your horse, not against it." Emma looked at Dakota, who stood patiently in his stall. The Mustang seemed almost eager for the challenge. Apache continued. "There will be no shortcuts. No trophies. No prize money." He paused. "The reward is discovering who you become before the trail ends." Just after sunrise, the riders set off in pairs. Emma and Dakota rode alongside Tyler and his mare, Willow. The first several miles were almost peaceful. Golden leaves drifted from towering aspens, while a cool breeze carried the scent of pine through the mountains. Deer darted through the forests, and hawks circled overhead. Emma smiled. "I almost forgot how beautiful the world is." Tyler laughed. "I've been too busy trying not to fall off my horse." They both laughed, easing the tension. By mid-morning, however, the trail became much more demanding. The climb toward Eagle Peak was steep and rocky. Every step required the horses to carefully choose their footing. Apache's words echoed in Emma's mind. "Trust your partner." Instead of forcing Dakota forward, she allowed him to set the pace. The Mustang climbed steadily, conserving his energy. Some riders rushed ahead. Others struggled to keep up. Emma ignored them. This wasn't a race. It was a lesson. Around noon, dark clouds rolled over the mountains. The temperature dropped quickly. A cold wind swept through the valley. Tyler looked nervously at the sky. "I don't like this." Before Emma could answer, thunder rumbled across the peaks. Within minutes, rain began pouring down. The trail turned slick with mud. Visibility shrank as heavy fog settled over the forest. The horses became restless. "Stay calm," Emma whispered to Dakota. The Mustang flicked his ears but continued moving carefully. Ahead of them, another trainee attempted to hurry across a narrow creek swollen by the rain. The horse slipped. Both rider and horse tumbled into the shallow water. "Help!" the rider shouted. Without hesitation, Emma dismounted. She tied Dakota's reins to a nearby tree and hurried toward the creek. Tyler joined her. Together they helped the frightened rider climb onto the bank. Fortunately, neither horse nor rider was seriously injured. The horse trembled violently. Emma remembered Apache's lessons. She approached slowly, speaking in a calm voice until the frightened animal settled enough to stand. Tyler looked at her in amazement. A month ago, you would have frozen. Emma smiled. A month ago, I probably would have. The storm continued for another hour before finally passing. Sunlight broke through the clouds, turning raindrops into tiny crystals that sparkled on every branch. The group resumed their journey. Only 10 miles remained. But exhaustion had begun to take its toll. Emma's legs burned. Her shoulders ached. Every muscle begged her to stop. Even Dakota's breathing had grown heavier. She gently patted his neck. We're almost there. The Mustang snorted softly, as if answering. Late that afternoon, they reached the final obstacle. A long suspension bridge stretched across a deep canyon. The wooden planks creaked in the wind. Several horses hesitated. One refused to cross entirely. Tyler's mare backed away nervously. I don't think she'll do it. Emma looked at Dakota. He stood quietly, watching the bridge. She remembered another lesson from Apache. Your horse borrows your confidence. If she showed fear, Dakota would feel it. If she remained calm, he would trust her. Emma took a deep breath. She loosened the reins. Let's go, partner. Dakota stepped onto the bridge. One careful step. Then another. The bridge swayed gently beneath them. Emma kept her eyes forward. She resisted every temptation to rush. Halfway across, Dakota paused. The canyon wind howled beneath the bridge. Emma leaned forward and gently stroked his neck. I trust you. The Mustang lowered his head slightly before continuing. Moments later, they reached the other side. Tyler watched them for several seconds. Then he smiled. If Dakota can do it, Willow can too. Within minutes, every rider had crossed safely. As the sun dipped below the mountains, the trainees finally returned to Red Canyon Ranch. They were muddy, exhausted, and sore. But every one of them had finished. Apache stood waiting outside the barn. He looked over the tired group. You all completed 40 miles. No one cheered. They were too exhausted. Apache smiled faintly. But that isn't what impresses me. His eyes settled on Emma. You stopped to help someone. Emma shrugged. They would have done the same for me. Exactly. Apache nodded. A great rider finishes the trail. He paused. A true horseman makes sure everyone else finishes too. Those words struck Emma more deeply than any compliment she had ever received. She finally understood why Apache's lessons had never focused on winning. Character mattered more than competition. Trust mattered more than speed. Compassion mattered more than pride. That evening, Emma sat outside Dakota's paddock as the stars slowly appeared above the Wyoming sky. Dakota grazed peacefully nearby. Apache walked over carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. He handed one to Emma. You've changed. She smiled. I think so. No. He shook his head. You've remembered who you were before fear convinced you otherwise. Emma stared at the endless horizon. For the first time since the accident, she didn't think about what she had lost. She thought about everything she had gained. She had found courage. She had found purpose. She had found a partner in Dakota. And, without realizing it, she had found a family at Red Canyon Ranch. Yet deep inside, she sensed her greatest challenge was still waiting. Because some journeys didn't end when the trail was over. Sometimes, that was where the real adventure began. The first light of dawn spread across Red Canyon Ranch, painting the hills in shades of gold. A cool breeze drifted through the valley as the horses grazed peacefully, their silhouettes standing against the rising sun. Emma stood outside Dakota's paddock, her hands resting on the weathered wooden fence. Tomorrow, she would leave. The thought felt strange. When she had first arrived at Red Canyon Ranch, she had counted the days until she could return home. Now, she wished she could slow time itself. Dakota walked over and gently nudged her shoulder, just as he had done so many mornings before. Emma smiled and rubbed his neck. I'm going to miss you too. The final day of training wasn't marked by another difficult trail or endurance ride. Instead, Apache gathered the trainees in the main arena. There were no saddles waiting. No obstacles. Only a circle of wooden chairs beneath the open sky. Tyler looked around in confusion. So, that's it? Apache nodded. Today's lesson doesn't happen on horseback. The trainees took their seats. For several moments, Apache said nothing. Then he asked a simple question. Why did you come here? One by one, everyone answered. A ranch worker wanted to become a better trainer. Another trainee dreamed of competing in rodeos. Tyler admitted he had come because his grandfather believed ranch life would teach him responsibility. Finally, Apache looked at Emma. And you? She took a slow breath. I came here because I thought the accident had taken everything from me. Silence settled over the group. I believed I wasn't brave anymore. She glanced toward Dakota in the pasture. But I was wrong. Apache nodded gently. What did you discover? Emma smiled. Courage isn't something you lose. It's something you choose. After breakfast, Apache approached Emma with Dakota's reins in his hand. One last ride. Just us. He smiled. Just us. Together they rode toward the highest point on the ranch, a ridge overlooking endless grasslands, winding rivers, and distant mountains. Neither of them spoke much during the journey. They didn't need to. When they reached the summit, Apache dismounted and walked toward the cliff's edge. Emma joined him. The valley stretched for miles beneath them. It was breathtaking. This place changed my life, Apache said quietly. Emma looked at him. You've never talked about yourself. He chuckled softly. I wasn't always a trainer. She waited. Years ago, Apache explained, he had dreamed of becoming one of the greatest competitive riders in the country. He had talent. He had ambition. He had won nearly every competition he entered. Then, during a championship event, his horse stumbled. The accident claimed the horse's life. Apache survived. But he never competed again. For a long time, he said, I blamed myself. Emma understood that feeling all too well. What changed? He looked toward the herd grazing peacefully below. One old rancher told me something I'll never forget. Apache smiled. He said, you can spend your life mourning the trail behind you, or you can help someone find the courage to ride the next one. Emma realized that was exactly what Apache had done for her. Every impossible challenge. Every uncomfortable truth. Every lesson. He had never been trying to make her into a champion rider. He had been helping her become whole again. As they prepared to leave the ridge, a familiar silver figure appeared among the trees. Ghost. The wild stallion stepped cautiously into the open. He stood watching them from a short distance. Apache remained perfectly still. So do we move? Emma whispered. No. Ghost slowly approached. His ears were forward. His posture was relaxed. He stopped only a few feet away. Emma remembered every lesson Apache had taught. Patience. Respect. Trust. Without speaking, she slowly extended her hand, not reaching for Ghost, but simply offering it. The stallion lowered his head. For the first time, Ghost gently touched her fingertips with his nose. Only for a heartbeat. Then he stepped back. Emma couldn't hold back her smile. He trusted me. Apache shook his head gently. No. She looked at him, puzzled. He chose to trust. There's a difference. Emma thought about those words as Ghost disappeared into the hills. Trust could never be forced. It had to be given freely. Just like courage. Back at the ranch, the trainees packed their bags and said their goodbyes. Tyler hugged Emma before climbing into his truck. "If you're ever back in Wyoming," he said, "you'd better visit." "I will." One by one, the others drove away. Soon, only Emma, Apache, and Dakota remained. Emma picked up her suitcase. "I don't know how to thank you." Apache smiled. "You already have." "How?" "You believed in yourself." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a small object wrapped in cloth. Inside was a silver horseshoe charm. It belonged to Dakota's first saddle. Emma looked at it in surprise. "I can't take this." "I wasn't asking." They both laughed. As Emma loaded her suitcase into the car, she turned back one last time. Dakota stood quietly near the fence. Ghost watched from a distant hill. Apache rested his arms on the gate, just as he had on the day she arrived. Only now, everything felt different. Months earlier, she had come searching for someone to fix her broken confidence. Instead, she had discovered that it had never truly disappeared. It had simply been buried beneath fear. She walked over to Apache one last time. "You once told me I was stronger than a Mustang." "I remember." She smiled. "I finally understand what you meant." Apache tipped his hat. "I knew you would." Emma climbed into her car and started the engine. As she drove down the long gravel road, she looked once more in the rearview mirror. Apache grew smaller in the distance. Dakota galloped across the pasture, free and powerful beneath the open sky. Emma smiled through grateful tears. She wasn't leaving Red Canyon Ranch behind. She was carrying its greatest lesson with her. Life would still bring unexpected storms. There would be difficult roads, painful falls, and moments of doubt. But now she knew something she hadn't known when she first arrived. Strength wasn't measured by how hard someone could ride. It wasn't measured by trophies, victories, or perfection. Real strength was getting back up after every fall, trusting again after every disappointment, and choosing hope when fear seemed easier. As the ranch disappeared beyond the horizon, Emma rolled down the window and breathed in the cool morning air. For the first time in years, the road ahead no longer frightened her. It invited her. And with a grateful heart and a fearless spirit, she drove toward whatever adventure awaited next.